Hi, thanks for joining me today. I have got a special guest, my friend Susan Corollo. Thank you for being here, Susan.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Well, I'm excited about it. I'm just going to tell you briefly Susan's an SRT practitioner, and we're going to be talking about healing past lives through that practice. Before we jump into that, hello to my listeners in Chicago, Illinois. Hey, that's a special area to me. My daughter lives in the west suburbs, and we go into Chicago a lot. So, love Chicago. Thanks for supporting the show the way that you do. It means a lot. Susan, I know a lot of people when I mention SRT, they're like, "What's that?" So let's start with it. What is SRT?
Okay, great question. So SRT stands for Spiritual Response Technique. Some people say spiritual response therapy. Either is fine. So it's SRT. And it is a modality that was created by an amazing healer, teacher, investigator, magician named Robert Detzler. And Robert Detzler was a unity minister. He passed in 2013, which I say was. And he began creating SRT back in 1985. And it began with another modality that he was studying, which researched going to the subconscious to clear the energies and the beliefs that are blocking an individual from whatever it is, whether it's purpose or relationship or fertility, whatever it is. And Robert sort of was using this with his parishioners when something came up, and with a young boy that came in and had something to claim about something that happened, and using the system, it indicated this was all true. But the other person involved that was being accused said, when did this happen? This never happened. And that's when Robert, working with spirit, they said it's a past life. And this young boy is remembering from a past life when he had the soul reconnection with this individual, which I believe was a step parent. All the past life energies and memories surfaced, and it was as if it was there. And this was a young person, so they couldn't really distinguish the difference. And that's when Robert began expanding the system to include past lives. And then the system grew. So the technicalities of it is it was channeled and downloaded over the course of 30 years, always keeping it current. And as humanity evolved, the system evolved, and it's using a pendulum, so basic kinesiology. And I always like to tell my students, a pendulum is just a weight on a string, right? It's just a way of bypassing the conscious mind or the body to access information that you don't consciously know. There's over 30 charts with a lot of information that we dowse. So you use the pendulum to work with spirit and high self and individual soul, their subconscious, to identify the root cause of the issues, the challenges that they're going through. And so the premise is that, everything that's ever happened to you, and I'd imagine a lot of your listeners are the word Akasha, the Akashic records isn't going to be such a foreign term. So everything that ever happens to a soul gets downloaded into your Akashic records, right? Everything you ever wanted to be, everything you've done, everything you've accomplished, including the energies that you attach to it, and including the beliefs that you subscribe to because of the experience. So I think plenty of us know that when we are in spirit before we incarnate, and we don't have the energies and the feelings, and it's all this beautiful wisdom, we can really decide to have a pretty rigorous curriculum when we incarnate. Right, so we incarnate, right, to learn. We incarnate to learn through experience. So sometimes I'll tell my students, it's like when you're in spirit, it's like you're watching TV, that horror film, and you're going, "Don't open that door! Don't open that door!" I mean, it's very well and good on the couch, not to do that. But when your adrenaline's going and you're freaking out, you open the door, right? And then all the consequences happen of when you were in the human condition, when you had energies, when you had emotions, so when we incarnate to do our lessons, the veil drops, And we start learning through experience, and we learn through challenges. And sometimes the challenges we learn, it goes great, fabulous, that gets downloaded. That's our wisdom. That's the stuff we just know. That's where we get our courage, our optimism from. However, a lot of times, especially earlier in times, a younger soul or whatever, there's hurt or harm. It's also part of the lesson. You might have been learning about forgiveness. So there's going to be hurt. But if you didn't right away forgive like you thought you would when you were up in spirit, so wise and smart, but in here you've got these energies and that kick in, that's going to get downloaded, those energies, you know, whether it's betrayal or anger or separation, whatever it might be. And it goes in, and then it's I like to say it's like it's in the hard drive. It's in the hard drive of the soul, like it's just there. So you finish your lifetime, you come back, and you are in Bardo. So if everyone doesn't know what Bardo is, you know, Bardo is where you plan your next life. You plan who you're going to be. You might go through your spiritual Rolodex, or for younger people, spiritual contact list, right? And you say, okay, well, let's be really efficient here. As long as I'm going to incarnate, I'm going to work on forgiveness and family life and children and, you know, money and income, whatever it is that you're working on that lifetime. You say, well, let me also clean up some karma I might have with some souls that I've worked with in the past. Maybe they're incarnating at the same time. So you can add that in. And you might say, well, you were the mother, so let me be the child. Or there's so many ways, so many options that we have to learn and to grow. And in Bardo, we plan this, and then we come down, the veil drops. And before we go, spirit hands you your hard drive, right? Which in this work, we call it's the etheric body, everything gets downloaded. And it's like, here, don't forget this. So when you turn that on and you activate again, oh, beautiful, let's start optimistically. All the wisdom comes up, and all of those energies. So the energies can really get in the way. Other things that can get in the way are beliefs. So with energies, I like to say everything from blame to guilt and everything in between. Anything fear-based can stop you, can inhibit you, can block you, compromise you. Like it all depends, and every soul is unique in how they process. And then the beliefs, everything from the Messiah complex to the Savior complex, to things that we clear in this. Messiah, I'm responsible for everyone and everything's my fault, and I got to fix, save, help, heal everybody, to the victim. Everything happens to me, nothing's my fault, and whatever. And either they're equally blocking, right? It's like, it's not true. So we have to identify the beliefs, and all of this are in the records. So I keep saying we, who's we? So we're doing, so the practitioner, the SRT practitioner, is not a healer. We facilitate the process for the soul, right? The individual soul has to do their own healing. That's your responsibility. But we can sure clear the path by clearing the records and deleting all of those discordant energies and correcting all those beliefs and replacing them with the truth, right? And there's other things. There could be contracts. I've worked with people that were stuck moving on in relationships. Well, they still had marriage contracts that they were honoring from previous life, right? So contracts, vows, promises, agreements, commitments, addictions, all this you could come in with before you even take your first breath. So that's what we want to clear. And that gets, and then that builds, because you try and have this experience, but then you have all these energies or these blocks, and you compound, and it builds and it builds. So if we can get in and get all of that out of your hard drive, what pops up is the wisdom from the experience. So I also see it as going to school, right? So we're trying to ascend. Our intention is to ascend and return to spirit and raise our consciousness by learning and growth. And so you take the same lesson over and over again. You don't learn it. Here you come again, but now with more baggage. So it's more difficult. Once we get that cleared, you don't have to do the lesson again, because the wisdom populates. So now you move forward clearer and wiser and able to go to that next level.
And I
So
had a session with you for this. I'm going to say that, like, I had a session, I think it's been 5 years, because it was shortly after I moved into this house. And I remember I was laying on the sofa because Susan does her sessions virtually. And I was laying on the sofa listening to her, and it was like it took off and we were going high speed through that thing. And I couldn't believe how many things you were dealing with so quick. I think it was an hour session, and there was a lot that you were just going full speed ahead with that. I think we talked about that later, and you said that's something different about the way you do it from the way most people do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, it is fast. I mean, compared to, I would say, the way maybe other modalities that deal primarily with present life. I mean, the beauty of doing the past life is like, so present life is like, imagine life as a tree, right? So present life are the leaves on the tree. And if you go in and you just deal with what happened to you in your childhood and what happened to you in that first relationship and what was it like, and all these things that absolutely get downloaded and you're dealing with, right? But it's like picking leaves off the tree. And that's going to take a long time, right? Then you look at picture that tree, and there's the twigs that are supporting the leaves, right? And that's kind of birth. We can, things happen in the birth. You can go back and in hypnotherapy or something else, go back and say, oh, this is trauma. This is birth trauma, right? And then there's the branches. And then the branches are womb, right? So there's a lot that goes on in those 9 months, or however long you are in the womb. You're getting your mother's energies, you're getting the world energies, you're getting all kinds of stuff that can also be part, again, I'm talking about before you even take your first breath, all this baggage, all these potential hindrances at the very least, that's going to make it challenging or difficult. And at the worst, block you entirely, make it impossible. So the thing is, the trunk of the tree then is Bardo that we were just talking about. That's where you planned it. So if you can clear it in Bardo, you can clear it kind of from happening in this life. But the roots, that's the past lives. And if we can get those roots, the whole tree goes down. So that's the expediency of it, Ivory, and that, when we go down to the roots, and we might have to get a few programs. So programs are things like, I see this as a filing system. So I'm blessed in that when I go in and I do the work, I get visuals. And I think that spirit does that for me because that's how I learn. Because anytime I learn something, I'm like, give me a picture, give me an example. That's just my learning. So that's how they communicate with me. And they truly show it when we go in. And it's like, on Word, they'll show the folders, the programs are like file folders, self-punishment, conflict, trauma, whatever it might be. And then I'll literally see them click on it when we go in, and all these like Word documents, and it's all the lifetimes. Right. It's all the lifetimes that you tried it again, like save as, like, let me go back. Well, you got to go back with what you left with, and then you might get some more. Right. So, so we don't have to go in. There could be hundreds of lifetimes in it. You don't have to go through it. You have to find those key ones that Robert used to call the head domino lifetimes. Like, give me the head domino lifetime. Let me just get 1, 2, 3, depending on how heavy the energy is. So, and the thing is, for every person, it's going to be different because, of course, every soul experiences differently and expresses differently. So, not everyone that had the same experience is carrying the same energies. Like, some fly through it with flying colors, and, others, are filing under self-punishment. Like, I need to be punished for that. Don't let me do that again. Others might say that was traumatic. That happened, it depends on the soul. So that's the beauty of this system, is that spirit guides it. And spirit, when we start, whatever, there may be a topic. Like I said, I've worked with people from everything from infertility to getting, to a job, to a relationship, to their purpose, opening to their intuitive gifts, whatever it is. It's not the same for everybody, because it's the energy that you attach to it when it happens. It's the beliefs you subscribe to because of it. And people are going to react and experience differently. I'm sure, you've got siblings, right? We all sat the same Thanksgiving Day table with this family, and this sibling takes away this, and I take away this, and it's like, wow, I didn't experience it the same way, and I'm sitting right next to you, right? So it's very individual, which is why this is so specific. And we go in, so as I keep saying, we're working with spirit. So working with, and here they show me, when I get the images, they show me offices, right? Which is what we learned, but that's how I see it. It's like offices, and I see the high self committee. So these are light beings who are in the spirit realms, and their work, their souls in evolution too. They're doing their work, but they're learning by assisting us. So their role is to go in to the Akashic records and find out, where did this go? Like, well, let's get to that root, that past life root. And then we'll go in they go in and they'll tell us, and it's all in the charts. And we find it in the charts because we're using the pendulum. And we're open up, and we're channeling spirit, and we're channeling high self, and it's coming through the pendulum, and we're getting what happened. So, and like I said, it's not what happened, it's the energies. But sometimes the soul needs to be heard and say, I'm not letting, you could say, you should just forgive, it'll set you free. It's not condoning it. And the soul's like, yeah, well, that doesn't change how I feel. Like, I get that, but I'm angry, I'm afraid, like whatever it is. So that's why we go in and we're like, what are the energies that you have? And we bring them up, and then we ask spirit to clear it. Spirit does the clearing, right? I self-identifies it, spirit clears, and then the soul is free to heal. Because the soul, and spirit always replaces. So when we don't leave a vacuum. When they remove all the negative, they replace it with the positive. And when they remove the beliefs, they replace it with the truth. Don't tell you what to think, but here's the truth. You've been operating under a false belief. It hasn't been serving you. Here's your truth.
That really makes sense to me on every level, just, with my own work and experiences I've had. There's some similarities to what they're doing and the results. What I like, after I had that session with you, I remember feeling really tired, like I had a really massive detox. Mm-hmm. And I have looked back on that a few times, and I feel like that really helped me kind of cut the last of the trauma I'd gone through in this lifetime that had been going on for decades, really, with various people kind of causing that in my life. And it sort of stopped, right there. It just felt like I felt healed finally. And I'd been working on that for a long time with various modalities and therapy. And I felt like that kind of took that last little root out. And I'm sure it was, because we did talk about past lives in that session. It was rapid, but I remember the past life stuff. And of course, there was things there that I wouldn't consciously remember that were still a little seed in there causing a problem. So I really feel like it rooted it out for sure. Mm-hmm.
And that's it's when you say the seed, because there's also a section that we go through where there might be blocks to positive. So we'll identify the negative and remove them and replace. But then there's a whole chart that's just all the positive that can be blocked. So, for instance, I've gone in, and it might be the energies are unhappiness and unworthiness, and you clear that, and then high self will bring you to the another chart. It's 6B, but the blocks, and then they'll say they're blocked to worthiness and happiness. So it's one thing to remove the energy, but then also sometimes the soul can be very efficient. That's also blocked even the potential. So this system is so thorough. That's why I think it works for people like me who are kind of right-brained and, come from a corporate background and all this. So it satisfies that while allowing you to really do that work, however, with spirit and in service. But a lot of my students, are people with, well, I have everyone from farmers, to CEOs, and everyone in between, because if you're called to it, to do the work, you're called to it. But the work itself, I've got just tons of testimonials, which I love only because I love hearing people be like, because I don't remember after it. I'm sure you get that.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm open and I'm channeling this, the information's coming, and I said I go very, very quickly because it's just like it's just flowing. And people will later say, "Well, remember you told me this and this happened, and oh my gosh, that was so spot on." And I honestly don't remember any of it, but I love hearing it. I love the validation because it's great to know. And and the beautiful thing is when I've worked with children, for instance, that don't know that they're being cleared, working with a parent or with a woman once, and her child was like night terrors, terrible night terrors all the time. And they'd done everything and they couldn't figure it out. And we did a session and there was past lives. This also clears, before you go in to do the work, we have to clear the space. We have to make sure that the committee serving us are at the highest level of consciousness. Like, I'm sure, I don't know if you've covered this before, but I mean, just because someone channels doesn't mean it's good information.
Oh, right. Yes.
Or the best information at the moment. It can be light. That's why even this, we work with there's so many light beings, but sometimes they could be who's blocking us because they're well intentioned and they're trying to help. However, they're not qualified, with their level of consciousness. So there's something we do in the beginning called prep to work, which addresses all of that. And we say, before you even ask a question out of this pendulum, make sure, that the interference is out, that everything's sealed, that everyone's on the same page. Because it's also like, when I see the high self coming in again, because the way that I see them coming in. It's like we're all reporting for duty. And does everyone have the same criteria? Does everyone know what we're working on? Are we all set? Is everyone here to help this soul? Right. And 100% for this soul and zero abdication energy. It's not about anybody but them for this hour. And we get the right people in, and then we put what Robert talked about, a triple shield of protection around, because then we're like operating. And again, I'm showing my age, but like I always say, it's like the cone of silence and get smart. Like we do this triple shield of protection, and then we go to work.
It's critical.
Yeah, it's critical. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. And then you don't always get the best answers, or so if it's not done properly, but it's done with good intention and everything, I think the worst that could happen is things don't change. Like it's or it's a less percentage. But Robert, over the 30 years, as things came up, he would address it. So there was a period of time where he checked and he was checking on the efficiency of all the practitioners in the world, because this is an international modality. I think there might even be more practitioners not in the U.S. than in the U.S.
I'm not sure. Surprised.
Yeah, there's not, and then there's practitioners, and then there's consultants, and then there's certified teachers. So they were very careful to make sure that it is done properly with integrity and mostly the most efficiently that it can be done.
Well, so, I'm glad you brought this up, because you are a certified teacher. I know you do a lot of teaching of SRT, which is really great. I think that just speaks to your knowledge and your skill. And you alluded to something I really planned to bring up because it's stuck in my head. I remember you saying that people who are psychic may not be the best suited to be an SRT practitioner. And I think it is because normally it is like really suited to people who are very analytical, but I'm an analytical psychic. Right. So right. I don't want to do SRT, but I just wanted to say to people, like, that's, just when there's generally doesn't mean there's always some exceptions.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's not that it's, firstly, I'll say this. Everybody, and I believe Robert said this, but anyone that comes to learn SRT, it's because you did it before, right? And that's what I tell my students is like, you're just remembering something that you did before, and we're updating it, right? So pretty much, like I get like the people that come already. So, but a couple of like I've got, and I'm really thinking of, I've trained, close to 1,000 students or practitioners. And I would say in that I've had 2 that really struggled. By profession, they were psychics. And so this is just my thought on it, because I was like, what, well, I could tell you what it was. And then like, because they were psychic, they'd immediately see the life, and they'd immediately do. And the thing is, we're like, yeah, it's not about getting the life, it's about getting all of the energy. Like,
they were bypassing the process.
Yeah, and that just was very tedious for them. Like, it's like they thought they wanted to do this, and those two both said to me, you know what was the thing that changed my life with the class? I learned to prep to work, because they said I didn't always do all of that.
Really?
And now they stay very clean in their sessions. And
well, that's good.
So they're like, oh gosh, now I have a technique and I have a format, and I've been trained to do this, so it's not so I'm just gonna, correct that state. Like, I didn't mean to say that they're not suited, but it's more challenging if you're not willing to, like, because you go there right away. It's
I can see that, but a psychic reading and SRT are two very different purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get a lot of information from myself psychically, but I could not do an SRT session on myself. Even if I was trained, I don't believe I could do that on myself. But I love knowing that it's a pendulum. I actually love pendulum work.
Yeah. And you totally could, Ivory. You could if you were trained to do it. Because in that moment, when you prep to work, you're just working with spirit. You're kind of like, like I said, we're just facilitating. High self's the one that's doing it. The soul's the one that's telling the story and giving you permission. Because when we find it, we always have to say, can we clear it? Because the soul has free will. Like, you don't just go in and do it. And even, for instance, when I told you I work with like a child or someone's pet, we always ask permission from the soul. Like, you never just go in and go, oh, this person needs some help. Even if you want it, it's up to them. They have free will. You can't interrupt.
I get that. Like,
right. Sometimes, like, not everything can be clear with SRT. Sometimes it absolutely is a challenge that the soul is working on. And there's a chart 3 where, like, you could ask if it can be done. And if it can't, and you ask why, it might bring you to chart 3. And there's these 6 bodies, and that's part of the training. But the 6 bodies of curriculum kind of programmed by spirit. Or, so it's like, no, you can't change this right now, like that. So not everything, but I have seen, people's lives change. And
well, we're going to talk about that. We are out of time for the podcast, so we're going to stop here. If you want to hear the rest of Susan's interview, it's going to be on my Patreon page, The Angel Room. And just a reminder, you can get a week free access to see this. And this was going to be posted today, same time as it was posted for podcast platforms and YouTube. It's going to be on Patreon. So when you're seeing this, it's available there. I want to thank Susan for being on the show. Those of you who aren't going to be coming over to Patreon, I will be putting Susan's website in the show description so that you can find that there and know how to contact her if you're interested in knowing more about SRT, having a session with her, or maybe training to be a student. Next Sunday's topic is removing blocks to your spiritual experiences. It's a topic we've talked a little bit about. This is going to be more about specific techniques for unblocking those, because that's coming up so much in the last few weeks with sessions. I always take that like as a angelic cue. Oh, here's what you need to talk about next. So thank you for joining us. In the meantime, may your angels surround you. May your angels protect you every moment, every day of your life. I'll see you next week.